Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to RobMotive. I'm out here cruising around in the 2025 Toyota Tacoma TRD off-road. And if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. Prior to this, I had a 2024 Toyota Tacoma TRD Sport. So I get asked a lot on the channel, which one is better? Which one do you like better? And there are some differences. Some are subtle, some not so much. First of all, I want to mention there was a recall issued recently, supposedly about 106,000 2024 and 2025 Toyota Tacomas, and it deals with the 17-inch wheel and potential interference or damage to the brake line. Because of the diameter of the wheel, stuff can get stuck under there, and the brake line is actually within the wheel itself. So if anything gets jammed in there, it's going to spin around and potentially cut or destroy that brake line, right? And if that happens, you lose all your brake fluid. That's one of the big differences. They say, Toyota, at the time I made this video, that it's due to the 17-inch wheel. That's what the TRD off-road comes with. The Sport comes with an 18-inch. Now, when I had my lift done and I bought this off-road, I had them switch the wheels, which were 18s, from the Sport to this truck. Long story short, maybe the Sport was better in that respect, at least if you're concerned about recalls, because it had the bigger wheels and supposedly not involved in the recall. I don't think that's true. I think it's going to become all across the board. But anyway, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Now, some more minor things. The ride quality. The Sport is a Sport, so it has a stiffer ride quality to it. Now, it's not hugely different. It's not like you're going to get or go from the Sport to the off-road and feel like the Sport was, riding with no shocks and no suspension. But it is noticeable. You'll notice a softer, more plush, if that makes any sense, ride on the off-road than what you get out of the Sport, which is kind of strange. You would think the off-road would be harder and firmer, right? But it's not. It's softer, so it can absorb all of the bumps and things from going off-road, right? That's the second thing, I guess, to mention. Thirdly, the hood scoop. Now, I've talked about this before. I love the hood scoop. I love the way that it looks, particularly on the 4th generation Tacoma. I think they made it even better, more integrated, if you will. But in doing so, it kind of weakens the hood a little bit. And I say that because driving around right now in the off-road, I'm looking at the hood and I see absolutely no movement. Not the same in the Sport. You couldn't help but catch the hood bouncing around as you were driving in the Sport. Even at somewhat slower speeds, I'm doing 60 right now, but even on roads that were bumpier, maybe even 30 miles an hour and up, maybe even lower actually, because any bump you would go over would make that hood bounce a little bit. Is it a problem? I wouldn't say it's a problem, although anything that moves when you're driving around over time is going to wear, right? I imagine that you could get even a little bit more weakness in that hood from its constant moving and flexing, right? Because certainly it is. Now, why is it doing that? Well, it's doing that because of the way it's designed for the hood scoop. It's not the same setup as what we have in the off-road. I would say it looks even a little bit different underneath. It looked a little bit less reinforced underneath, if I recall, than my off-road does. That's probably one of the biggest things that you're going to notice between the two trucks. Otherwise, the styling of the truck minus the hood scoop, pretty much identical. We have a different sticker on the back. My Sport was a 2-wheel drive, but even so, that was really just a suspension difference, or a drivetrain difference, I should say, and not really anything else when it comes to appearance and looks. On the interior of the truck, I do have the bigger screen, and even though I don't really think there's a good justification to getting it from a functional standpoint, aesthetically, and maybe functionally, when you look at it, obviously everything is bigger. It's easier to see stuff. So you really have to spend less time kind of concentrating on what you're looking at as you do with the smaller 8-inch screen, right? Not a huge deal. The only thing that's different between the two is that the 14-inch, the bigger screen, has navigation. I don't know that spending an extra $845 for navigation is really necessary, because in today's world, you have navigation on every smartphone, right? I mean, it's got Google Maps and all kinds of apps and things you can download if you want to go with a different navigation service. Plus, they're always going to be up to date. Unless you pay to have your Tacoma's system updated, it's not going to be. As soon as they finish that new road that they're building or rename that street, you're going to be out of date and potentially have a problem when you're trying to navigate somewhere. Is that a reason to get the smaller screen? It might be, because it really doesn't matter other than aesthetically, as I mentioned. Otherwise, fit and finish, that kind of thing between the two trucks, I haven't really noticed anything worse as comparing the two. In other words, everything has been pretty spot on this truck. I haven't noticed any weird gaps like I had on the 3rd generation. You know, one of the biggest things before was the gap on the rear bumper between the bumper itself and the bodywork of the truck. One side was always bigger than the other side, or smaller, depending on your perspective. I haven't noticed that on this truck. Everything on it that I've looked at, and I've looked at it pretty closely, is the way it should be. Certainly within any tolerances or specs that Toyota has out there. Paint-wise, we got to talk about paint. You know, Toyota gets dinged all the time about its paint thickness, its paint quality. I haven't seen anything between the two trucks that would lead me to believe it's still like that. Everything looks good to me. Now, over time, maybe we shall see. Maybe the paint will wear a little bit more. You know, I live in South Texas where it's sunny like it is today most of the time. We get hit with a lot of UV rays down here, and if anything's going to ruin or break down your paint, it's going to be living in a climate in an area like I do. So we'll see over time. I do plan on having this truck, fingers crossed, for quite a while. I know I switch vehicles frequently, but I don't see anything else happening in the next, I don't know, 5 years at least, probably, with Toyota to warrant changing this truck. Unless there's some big technological discovery or improvement, I really don't see a reason to switch it out. Anyway, I just wanted to get on my opinion. If you like a smoother ride, the TRD Off-Road is probably the version you ought to get. If you like the hood scoop more and you like more road feel, more firmness in the suspension, then the TRD Sport is probably the way to go. For me personally, it's about ride quality. I do prefer the ride quality of the TRD Off-Road. I like a softer ride. I don't want to be beat up. I don't need to feel the road. I know it's under my tires, so I would choose the TRD Off-Road. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've driven both. Which one did you prefer and why? Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.